So, testing, one, two, three. Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. Just drop me a one in the chat to let me know that you are hearing me and that we are live. Yes, I believe we are. Okay, I think we are live right now. So, yeah, thank you all for being here. I see XYZ who arrived first. He never returned as a horse, present and accounted for. Thank you. Islam, Entero Verdad. Daduza, of course, thank you. DHC21, Marek. And yeah, well, let me just have a look here. Yeah, so guys, thank you. This is a preview of something new that I'm working a couple of days ago, in fact, right now, today, uh, someone came on and said on a stream I was on with Thaddeus and said, "You don't know what atheism is. You don't know what atheism is." So I went to my database. Hi, Marion, welcome. And I provided something like 20 academic definitions of atheism from academic sources. These are dictionaries and encyclopaedias, and from the works of major academics, professors within the philosophy and religion. And this guy basically turned around and said, "Those are not my dictionaries." So, yeah, sadly, this is what it is. And in fact, just a few minutes ago on my own YouTube, someone just mentioned as a comment when I provided the definitions from numerous encyclopedias as to what atheism is, he's now rejecting and denying those, which is Abdulism. And while atheists may not admit it, they may not even be familiar with the fact that their ideas are an ideology. This ideology can be traced back, of course, to around the time of the French Revolution. So you're looking at the late 1700s, early 1800s. During that period, there was a huge amount of formation of this particular ideology, the set of ideas of doctrine. Karin Weiss, welcome. However, you can actually trace it well back, well before that. You can go to, there are certain periods, there's a period like in the 15th century, but you can also go back to the 5th century BC, and I will be getting to that in the future, where you can look at the foundations of their ideological position, right, in terms of their worldview and their thinking, which is sophist, which is moral relativist. And this goes back to the sophists and Protagoras. But that's a longer story. Cole Brown, welcome for a longer day. So anyway, let's just jump into this. This is a preview. I will be doing this with Thaddeus at another point. But let's have a look at some new material. So this is called Atheos, without God, atheism defined. And of course, yeah, this is the typical response. That's not my dictionary. Yeah, and then also I came across this little book, America's New Fundamentalists, Secular Fundamentalists, When Atheism Becomes Religion. Have a look at this. It might be an interesting read. I looked at some of it and I got some interesting information from it. Previously, this was published as I Don't Believe in Atheists. So yeah, something to keep in mind. But yeah, atheists always claim that they simply lack belief. It's merely a lack of belief. It's not a doctrine. It's not a position. And I thought, okay, fine. So how many academic sources do we need to provide to determine that this view is false? I mean, this is like when you show an Abdul his own sources, the words of Muhammad himself. They'll say, well, I believe something else because I read the Quran and I believe this. They suddenly all turn into Quran-only people, or they reject and throw every single one of their sources under the bus. Atheists are no different. So, it's merely a lack of belief. In what? Okay, so the term a is Greek for without, and theos, God. Atheos, without God. We'll go into more depth as we go through this. Now, the claim that atheism is not a belief like theism, but merely the absence of belief, a lack of belief, therefore needing no evidence, is a rhetorical strategy to avoid defending a truth claim. Because, as we know, atheists do not simply lack belief and are neutral in their position. They are actively hostile to Christianity. They are actively hostile to the concept of God. They are hostile to Christians. Now, of course, they're going to say, well, not all. Okay, well, yeah, but enough. Plenty of them. We run across them a million times a day, right? To deny that it is an ideological position is a tactic to cast the burden of evidence onto the theist, specifically the Christian. Evidence is not needed for non-positions, you see. Hence, they don't need evidence because they don't have a position. It's merely the lack of belief. I don't need food because I'm not hungry, therefore I don't believe in food. See? Makes sense, doesn't it? Now, is this often stated definition correct, or is it sophistry? It's Abdulism, Marian. It's Abdulism. All believe me. Now, let's have a look at this man called Ludwig Feuerbach. This is very, very interesting. So Ludwig Feuerbach lived 1804 to 1872. Now, I'm not going to go into depth with him either, but this is interesting. He quotes, "What yesterday was still religion is no longer such today. And what today is atheism, tomorrow will be religion." So, pro-life Chloe, hey, welcome. Thank you for being here, Chloe. So now, understand he was highly influential. He was a highly influential philosopher, and his ideas influenced numerous people of that era, well-known names of that era, including Karl Marx. Remember, I've covered within my series on socialism, on secular humanism and socialism so far, that socialism was created as a religion, specifically a ripoff of Christianity with all of the spiritual aspects stripped out, with Jesus and God stripped out. It was scientific Christianity. Now, atheists, of course, will claim that this is not true, whatever, Abduls, right? But it was started specifically as a religion, and this doctrine permeated this religion, this atheistic doctrine permeated this religion, because atheists found utility in religion. It was useful. So they didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, let's look at the Oxford Dictionary, which apparently gets the definition wrong. The Oxford Dictionary doesn't say it's just a lack of belief. No, Corin Weiss, secular humanism is a religion. I'm doing a series on that. I have finished the slides. It is very, very detailed. I promise you, it was created specifically as a religion. Socialism is a religion. I want you to be very clear about that. Atheism in the United States is a religion. It is legally protected and was defended, and at the insistence of atheists, went to the Supreme Court to have it made legally a religion. And there's a lot about that we will get into. So I've covered some of that already in my discussions. Please look at the most recent videos on my channel. Yeah. So let's look at the Oxford Dictionary. Atheism: disbelief in or denial of the existence of a god. Also, disregard of duty to God or godlessness. Now, the word denial, or to deny, the verb, is an assertion, meaning that is a position. It is an ideological position, an argument. An assertion that an allegation is false. That's on Merriam-Webster. And a statement that something is not true or does not exist. So it is a statement. It is a position. It is not a lack of belief. It's not an absence of hunger because, and therefore, you don't believe in food, right? That's from the Cambridge Dictionary. Now, the Oxford Dictionary, I got this from Thaddeus, right? So this tells us this is a disbelief in or denial. A denial is an active thing, to deny. Let's have a look. Etheal, older term, obsolete, right? Etymology, Greek, without God, or denying God, to deny God. So it's an active position. Any active position must have reasons, right? Any active position must have reasons. And of course, they want to not present those reasons because these philosophies are not very, shall we say, building on quicksand. People nowadays be changing the definition of words, making up their own dictionary. And this is true. In fact, atheists have, since the turn of the century, the previous century, been working very hard to change the definition of the word religion. By the definition of, well, if one looks at the previous, what was called the substantive definition of Christianity, Christianity is religion that has a belief in God, and it has certain ideas that flow from that. Whereas atheism and secular humanism would not meet that definition. They had to argue for a new definition, what they called the functional definition. So they had to, like they changed the meaning of words, like in today's culture, right? Islam changes the meaning of words as well. So now, yeah, so let me see any comments. And yeah, so let's see. Okay, sophists and sophistry. Protagoras. We'll briefly touch on Protagoras. I will cover him in the future in more depth. Sophistry. Definition of sophistry: subtly deceptive reasoning or argumentation. So subtle but deceptive. The first known use of sophistry was in the 14th century. That's the 1300s. And to find more about that's one of the periods I mentioned that's close to that period where atheism and these ideas became a well-known doctrine. So, sophists were ancient Greek teachers of rhetoric and philosophy prominent in the 5th century BC. These philosophers were considered adroit in their reasoning. They were considered good. But later philosophers, particularly Plato, described them as sham philosophers, out for money, willing to say anything to win an argument. I think we've all seen this. Now, sophists, from Greek sophistes, wise man or expert, they earned a negative connotation as a captious or fallacious reasoner. Sophistry is reasoning that seems plausible on a superficial level, but is unsound or used to deceive. So yes, then we're talking now about the idea that atheism is merely the absence of belief, a lack of belief. Now, the etymology. We'll do etymology a third time later. From ancient Greek, atheos, godless, without a god. An atheist is one who rejected the gods. To reject something is an active process. It's not simply one who lacks belief, who didn't think about it. I forgot to post the letter because I had an absence of thinking about it. No, okay, whatever. Right, one who rejected the gods worshipped by the wider society. Right, so you actively reject the gods worshipped by the wider society. So that is one of the oldest definitions. They give their references here from 1879, Latin Dictionary, 1934, French Dictionary, and so on. And that's from Wiktionary. Let's continue. It's mental. It's a psychological state. So now the redefinition of atheism as a lack of belief is not a position on God's non-existence. So to lack a belief in God's existence, to have this empty space in your head is not a position. It is not a truth claim. It is a description of a psychological state. The odd thing is that 99% of the dictionaries that discuss this fail to bring up this idea of the psychological state, or it becomes a minor position. Okay? Now, a psychological state is not a truth claim. It merely is. Okay, so you lack belief, right? But you know that atheists have beliefs. They have positions. They have arguments for and against. They have arguments for their position, and they most definitely dislike Christianity. They dislike those doctrines, and they believe they have superior, better doctrines. Now, psychological state is not a truth claim. It merely is. So this would be psychologically in fact, rationally incoherent to state that because it merely is, it is not a truth claim. Fine. It is not a truth claim which is positive or negative of something. Thus, unfortunately, this idea of lacking a belief makes my pet rock an atheist, as is the cat next door and my toaster. My watch is an atheist because it lacks belief. So unfortunately, this is a very broad and not very useful definition because, look, all of these things lack belief. My mobile phone lacks belief. My mouse lacks belief. However, if this person has arguments to present, then they have a position. The moment they have an argument to present, they have a position. And you'll find that the philosophers, the people who founded this new concept of atheism, especially back in the late 18th century, early 19th century, they had doctrine. They had very detailed doctrines, especially if you go back into the early 20th century. Very, very detailed doctrine that they're following. Right, so I want to introduce this idea. This is a book called The Irrational Atheist I want to recommend to you guys. It's well worth reading. Vox Day has his share of controversy, but all that aside, the book is interesting. I've read it a couple of times. I've actually bought it on Audible. I've listened to it a couple of times. It's really good. Dissecting the unholy trinity of Dawkins, Harris, and Hitchens. And he calls Harris the clown of reason, for good reason. Now, on one side of the argument is a collection of godless academics with doctorates from the finest universities in England, France, and the United States. On the other is irrational atheist author Vox Day. I'm just going to read you guys the blurb of the book. Armed with nothing more than historical and statistical facts. And I've noticed the atheists that I've been dealing with in my comment section care nothing for facts. They care nothing for history. They care nothing for information. Presenting a compelling argument, but not for the side one might expect, Day strips away the pseudoscientific pretensions of new atheism with his intelligent application of logic, history, military science, political economy, and well-documented research. He also uses sarcasm and humor. It's actually very funny. The arguments of Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, and Michael Onfray are all methodically exposed and discredited as Day provides extensive evidence proving, among other things, that, and a few examples, more than 93% of all the wars in human history had no relation to religion. The Spanish Inquisition had no jurisdiction over professing Jews, Muslims, or atheists, and executed far fewer people on an annual basis than the state of Texas. Of course, this was a secular thing done by the state, right? But that's a separate discussion for another day. But it's really interesting to listen to and talk about it or read it. Atheists are nearly 4 times more likely to be imprisoned than Christians. Red state crime is primarily in the blue counties in those red states. In other words, you're more likely to do crime. As an atheist, sexually abused girls are 55 times more likely to commit suicide than girls raised Catholic. In the 20th century, atheistic regimes killed 3 times more people in peacetime than those killed in all the wars and individual crimes in the last 2,000 years combined. Hey, Sergeant Grinch, welcome. Right, and then of course the irrational atheist provides the rational thinker with empirical proof that atheism's claims against religion are unfounded in logic, fact, and science. So that's the irrational atheist. Now, briefly, secular ideologies kill. Atheists will often claim that religion causes war, and in fact, Sam Harris, the clown of reason, states that, and as we've heard Dawkins and many, many atheists will tell us that religion causes war, and in fact, it's the most significant cause of conflict, violence, and death in history. Right. Now, this is the Encyclopedia of Wars. It has 1,763 wars by cause, not battles, right? Wars. From 8000 BC to 2000 AD, 93% of those wars are secular. Right. Now, notice Islam is responsible for nearly half, well, actually, for nearly, 3.8% of these wars that are listed here can be said to have a religious component, some connection, built to speed welcome, some connection to religion, right? That's 3.8%. But notice Islam on its own, 3.2%, nearly the same amount, Islam on its own, because Islam within its own sources defines itself as a political system, as a deen, not as a religion. Now, let me turn that off. Nazism, Marxism, fascism are all secular ideologies. All of them are versions of socialism. Now, claims to science and reason do not automatically result in an atheist utopia free of violence and bigotry or lead man to reason. Atheists, as I've said in my other shows, are communism's useful idiots. Atheism is mandatory in communist political parties, and atheism was integral. It is entirely integral to socialism. Remember, socialism began as an atheist religion. Atheism is incoherent Gnostic cultism. That's a longer story for another day. Now, let's look at this, the 100 Worst Atrocities, the great big book of horrible things, the definitive chronicle of history's 100 worst atrocities. Now, the clown of reason, Sam Harris, is a critic of the historic impact of religion on ancient and modern societies. He's also known for his, as we discovered recently, his love of totalitarianism and censorship. In his book, The End of Faith, Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason, he referred to religious faith as the most prolific source of violence in our history. Now, oddly enough, this study of the 100 worst crimes in history, only 11% are in the category of religious conflict. Now, do understand, it is not possible to single out religion as the only source. Right? So there will be multiple other factors, usually secular factors. Religion it is not the only factor. So to being generous here, you can add 2 more under the category of human sacrifice. One of those is where the Romans murdered Christians for sport in the Colosseums, right? Fed them to the lions and so on. And of course, then you've got the Aztecs who were murdering people by the tens of thousands. So, yeah, not exactly Christian, right? So unfortunately, at best, these guys can muster very, very little evidence to prove their claim. And there's a lot more evidence where that came from. Give you a moment to read the joke here. But, sir, the Spanish are coming and they bring a new religion. How bad is that religion? It forbids sacrificing children and eating human flesh. Sadly. And of course, here's the other one. Here comes the far right. These are the Aztecs. This is what they did. They were cannibals. They sacrificed people. And, but of course, they will attempt through their propaganda to twist anything and make it negative. I'm going to skip over this. I've seen this before. So let's have a look at Britannica. Atheism as rejection of religious beliefs. The critique and denial is an active process, of metaphysical beliefs in God or spiritual beings. It is distinguished from theism, which affirms the reality of the divine. So understand, now you've got a position which affirms and has reasons for it. Then you have the opposite position which denies and has reasons for it. Atheism is distinguished from agnosticism, which leaves open the question of whether there is a God or not. But atheism is not only a rejection of the central conceptions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it is also a rejection of the religious beliefs of blah, 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 blah. Atheism is a denial of God or of the gods, and if religion is defined in terms of belief in spiritual beings, then atheism is the rejection of all religious belief. It's not just an absence of belief. Stanford University, I went to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. They provide about 30 different definitions on their own page, or a host of them rather. So, specifically in the philosophy of religion, the term atheism is standardly used to refer to the proposition, notice, the proposition that God does not exist. If you're making a proposition, you have to have reasons for it. Or more broadly, to the proposition that there are no gods. Thus, to be an atheist on this definition, it does not suffice to suspend judgment on whether there is a God. You can't simply say I lack belief, even though that implies a lack of theistic belief. Instead, one must deny that God exists. You have to take an extra step. You have to start denying. Then you have to provide reasons. These atheists don't have great reasons, so they don't want to be challenged. This is simply, it's wordplay, it's sophistry, it's a grammar trick. That's all it is. Now, they mention within this article, Robin Le Poidevin writes, an atheist is one who denies the existence of a transcendent creator, rather than one who simply lives his life without reference to such a being. That would make you an agnostic. Schellenberg says that in philosophy, the atheist is not just someone who doesn't accept theism, but more strongly, someone who opposes it. Notice he opposes it. Now, of course, the Hebrew word for opposer is Satan. From a Christian doctrine, from a Christian point of view, this is an oppositional doctrine. It's satanic. We've discussed secular humanism. We've looked at the Temple of Satan. We've looked at the tenets of the Temple of Satan. They are entirely in keeping with those of Marx, of Lenin, and of the secular humanists. Right? Those ideas are Enlightenment values. In other words, atheism is the denial of theism, the claim that there is no God. It is the denial. What are the reasons for that denial? They need to provide reasons. It's not simply the lack of belief, a psychological state. Notice they state here, this metaphysical sense of the word is preferred over the other senses, including the psychological sense, not just by theistic philosophers, but by many atheists in philosophy as well. Now, I couldn't find much by way of, whatever. Let's look at the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy. It recognizes multiple senses of the word atheism, but is clear about which is standard in philosophy. Atheism is the view that there are no gods. A widely used sense denotes merely not believing in God and is consistent with agnosticism in the psychological sense. So the psychological sense is just agnosticism. A stricter sense denotes a belief that there is no God. This use has become standard. So, atheists always seem to get their definitions wrong. Let's continue. The Routledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy. This definition also found in multiple encyclopedias and dictionaries of philosophy. In this one, William Rowe, also an atheist, writes, atheism is the position, notice the position, it is a position, that affirms the non-existence of God. It affirms it on what basis? What are its reasons? It proposes, so now it proposes an argument. It proposes positive disbelief rather than mere suspension of belief. So suspension of belief, no. It says it's an active proposition. It is an argument. Right, let's see. The Routledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy, I believe it is. Or this could be the Macmillan Encyclopedia. I think I might have forgotten to change this word. That's a typo I'll fix later. Interestingly, the Encyclopedia of Philosophy recommends a broadening of the standard definition of atheist. Now, atheists they've had to broaden the definition of religion to be accepted as a religion and to have secular humanism accepted as a religion, but they've had to change the definition of atheism too for their benefit. It still requires rejection of belief in God as opposed to merely lacking that belief. Of course, the basis for that rejection is not that theism is false. It might instead be that it is meaningless. So they've got their own, another argument, but I think that point is made for now. Now, according to the most usual definition, an atheist is a person who maintains that there is no God. That is, that the sentence God exists expresses a false proposition. So it is not merely the lack of belief. You cannot have a false proposition unless you have something else instead, right? It's a false proposition. It's wrong. On what basis? What are your reasons? What is your argument to prove that it is wrong? So again, that's another cop-out. This is what atheists do. So in contrast, an agnostic maintains that it is not known or cannot be known. Okay, where that is whether the sentence God exists expresses a true proposition. Right. Now, on our definition, an atheist is a person who rejects belief in God. Excellent. So now we constantly have this. Someone who rejects, okay? So now you've got the idea of this false proposition. Let's continue. Let's go back here. In the book Arguing About Gods, Graham Oppy, an atheist, repeatedly treats agnostic in the psychological sense of someone who suspends judgment about God's existence, and atheist as mutually exclusive categories. That's the book here. He is Professor of Philosophy and a member of the Australian Academy of Humanities, working at Monash University in Australia. He taught mostly philosophy of religion, metaphysics, and logic. His current courses are, as he says, God, freedom and evil, metaphysics, and philosophy of religion. So, yeah, I assume he knows what he's talking about. Atheism, from the Greek atheos, no God, is the philosophical position that God doesn't exist. Notice, philosophical position. So therefore, it has doctrine, it has reasons, arguments to support its position. It is distinguished from agnosticism, the argument that it is impossible to know whether God exists or not. That's the academic American encyclopedia. This eventually was bought out by Grolier. It became the Grolier Multimedia Encyclopedia. I'm not sure if they still exist anymore. Let's look at the Enlightenment once more. Atheism. This is very significant. It is a system of thought developed around the denial of God's existence. Atheism, so defined, first appeared during the Enlightenment, the Age of Reason. Have a look at my first show on this, which discusses atheism. Let me go to my channel for a moment and just bring up that particular. So if I go here, this is my channel. I've recently discussed this. I've got here death in the name of atheism, right? Killing in the name of atheism, the atheist cult of reason. And here's where we discuss the founding of the very first atheist state, which ended in a bloodbath. So the French Revolution was a socialist revolution. It was the very first secular atheist state where atheism became mandatory. And of course, in the name of reason, in the name of stamping out fanaticism, the atheists murdered over 250,000 people. They slaughtered priests, they slaughtered nuns, they slaughtered Christians. They went a little overboard. And of course, they formed a cult of reason. And in fact, then afterwards, they formed another cult after that. And yeah, so the French Revolution, crazy stuff. So these were killings in the name of atheism. And of course, it ended in disaster. Then I've got here socialism, the atheistic religion. This is another, So this Age of Enlightenment. So now understand, so modern atheism as we know it, the philosophy begins around that period. It strengthens around that period, picks up momentum. And then the first atheistic state is created, which is violent in the extreme, irrational in the extreme, cultish in the extreme, right? And so, so we need to at some point have a deeper look into the Enlightenment, but this is where atheist ideas come from. Now, atheists, again, this idiot that I spoke to earlier in the chat, is like, well, I just have my beliefs. That's what Abdul said. The moment you show them all the embarrassing things in Islam, they're like, well, I don't believe that. I just believe what I believe. Great. So now we suddenly have a religion of one. Atheists do exactly the same thing. Their ideology, their doctrine, their system of thought relies on philosophers, has a history, traceable history. And that history is highly embarrassing and covered in blood. Atheism is the doctrine that there is no God. Again, doctrine. Christianity has doctrine. Whole host of reasons and reasons why. Right? Some atheists support this claim by arguments, but these arguments are usually directed against the Christian concept of God and are largely irrelevant to other possible gods. Notice, it is specifically anti-Christian. Well, because the Age of Enlightenment and the French Revolution was specifically anti-Christian. The whole idea of their doctrine, if we go through, as you look at the videos that I've been producing so far recently on this topic, and the ones that will come, you will see that they are specifically anti-Christian. Their whole aim and intent is to replace Christianity with their own atheist religion. They now have a new functional definition. What does a religion do for society? Well, we want our own religion minus God. And that's it. And that's the Oxford Companion to Philosophy. So, of course, I'm just, these are going through these. Any comments from anyone at the moment? I mean, this is source after source after source from academia. And of course, I've shown them to a few atheists and they just deny the whole lot of them. But does this make sense so far? Does this all, this is the first time I'm showing this. I'll be doing this with Thaddeus and I'll just getting a run through of this material. But what are your thoughts on this so far? Does it make sense to you? Now, let's look at a Dictionary of Philosophy by Thomas Maltner. XYZ, thank you. Corin Bice, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Does atheists walk hand in hand with Stoics? I haven't looked into that, Sergeant Grinch. They certainly do with the Sophists. They do with the Sophists. Corin Bice, this is so eye-opening. Please tell me more, Corin. So I really appreciate the feedback. Daduza, thank you. What is eye-opening? Because this is the history of atheism, right? We're looking at history. We're looking at actual academic study from top experts worldwide. And this is what atheism doesn't speak about, that they want to claim they have no beliefs, so you don't examine their beliefs. Right? So atheism, Greek Theos, God, right, is the view that there is no divine being, no God, the view from the Dictionary of Philosophy. Now, atheism is the belief that God doesn't exist, the World Book Encyclopedia. So atheism, as we all know, is the belief that their beliefs are not a belief. Right? Let me type that up. So, yeah, so as we all know, atheism is the belief that their beliefs are not a belief. Yeah, that's atheism. So yeah, it's the belief that your beliefs are not a belief. So yeah, but notice this reference here tells us that we have beliefs. That's the World Book Encyclopedia. Atheism is the belief that God doesn't exist. So you have a belief. It's not an empty, neutral position. Seb, and it is true that there is no God. Yeah, so how can you prove that? You don't have that proof. Now, actually, hold on. You know what? Since we're here, because I mean, obviously you're smarter than Carl Sagan, right? I mean, I don't want to, because clearly this guy's. Which slide are we on? Let me just double check which slide I'm on before I go further. 21. Yeah. Now, of course, everybody is smarter than Carl Sagan. Now, atheists love to present the quote by Carl Sagan that the universe is, all there was, and all there ever will be. But let's have a look at Carl Sagan, who's not a real atheist, right? Obviously. Now, at least he will suddenly become not a real Muslim. Sorry, how did I get that wrong? Carl Sagan, not a real Muslim. Okay, he's not following real Islam. Carl Sagan says an atheist is someone who is certain that God does not exist. Someone who has compelling evidence against the existence of God. But Carl Sagan says, I know of no such compelling evidence. And he says, because God can be relegated to remote times and places and to ultimate causes, we would have to know a great deal more about the universe than we do know to be sure that no such God exists. So, yeah. Now, of course, Seb wants to tell us that if there was a God, he would have made it obvious. Well, lots of people who don't have broken faculties find it very clear as day that God exists because the evidence is obvious. So obviously, I would say an atheist is someone whose perceptual faculties are clearly broken. Right, are clearly very, very broken. Now, the thing is, do we listen to Seb Oz or do we listen to Carl Sagan? I'd say I'd listen to Carl Sagan over Seb Oz any day, because random Muslim atheist Abdul in the comments, 69, is, yeah, who are you? Are you important? So, yeah. So, anywho, back to our regularly scheduled program. So, Seb, why do atheists always, and this is not an accident, it's a lie. Why do atheists constantly lie about, oh, it's just a lack of belief? So, I mean, I've gone through, 20 references so far from academia. And obviously you're going to make up your own personal religion now. You're going to, like an Abdul, like the average Abdul, you're going to make up your own personal religion, right? You're going to tell us, no. That's what I believe. Okay, great. So everyone else has it wrong and you're correct. Let's continue. Right. So, according to the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, the most usual definition of an atheist is a person who maintains that there is no God. And of course, this dictionary, this encyclopedia, rejects eccentric definitions of the word, right? So this one rejects eccentric definitions of the word, right? So Erkin, some just passively don't believe, some actively no. Atheism is the active rejection. According to every single academic resource that I've looked at, a lack of belief is agnosticism. So morality is relative to atheism, so they can lie, of course, and that is 100% factual, Zahar. In fact, the philosopher behind the philosophy of atheism as applied today, the sophistry, the sophist, was Protagoras. His philosophy is morally relativistic. It doesn't believe in objective truth. In fact, truth is what you perceive, right? So two people who perceive something, each of them is true, even if they are utterly contradictory. And in fact, because man is the measure of all things, which is one of his statements, and one of the things the Enlightenment philosophers who developed modern atheist philosophy, right? Because they have this idea, so that basically of what is, and what is not, what you perceive to be true. So that all that exists is what you can see. So if you're an idiot and half blind and you can't see things, well, it doesn't exist, right? So man is the measure of all things, and what man cannot perceive does not exist. So it's that simple. It's entirely subjective. There is no objective reality there to that. Let's have a look at the Encyclopedia of Religion. Atheism is the doctrine. Once again, we have doctrine. Again, when we go back into the history, it is doctrine. It is page after page, book after book, scholar after scholar, writing absolute claptrap, okay? Irrational nonsense, complete babble, word salad. I mean, I've had to read through some of this crap. Anyway. So, atheism is the doctrine. So it's not just a lack of belief. Again, we're not finding that within these academic sources, right? So, atheism is the doctrine that God does not exist, that belief in the existence of a God is a false belief. Now, that is a truth claim. That is a truth claim. So, therefore, it's not merely a lack of belief. These are truth claim, right? Now, Erkan, there are multiple non-theistic religions. Yes, now, it depends on the definition you use, and atheists have gone to court, literally gone to court. They've gone as far as the US Supreme Court to argue that their non-theistic religion is a religion. And they've been vindicated in court, and they finally are a religion. Atheism in the US is, at the Supreme Court level, is legally a religion. Secular humanism was started explicitly as a religion. Socialism was started explicitly as an atheist religion. Right? So atheists, by definition, are secular. Secular humanism is by definition atheist. Socialism is by definition atheistic. So these are all, and they all are atheistic religions. They are religions. They have their denominations. You get these guys and those, but it's all the same religion. Now, if you have a false belief, if you claim something is a false belief, that means you have a belief that says something else, right? And you have proof that something is false. So the word God here refers to a divine being regarded as the independent creator of the world, a being superlatively powerful, wise, and good. In fact, being as opposed to a being. Carl Sagan took the easy road and clung to his eternal universe, even though he knew better. Yeah, well, he contradicts that claim of all that is. I mean, so I'm willing to listen to Carl Sagan. At least Carl Sagan has a name and is public and he's famous. So, who am I to? He's a scientist, isn't he? Atheism denies the existence of deity. Funk and Wagnall's New Encyclopedia, Volume 1. So it denies. Denial is an active process. It's not simply the absence of something. I mean, Christianity, by that definition, is simply the lack of belief, right? So hold on, let's just get that one out there. So atheism is so Christianity is the lack of belief. There we go, fixed it for you. Christianity is the lack of belief. Atheism is the lack of belief, and Christianity is the lack of belief. There you go. Problem solved. Word games for you, right? Yeah, Corin Weiss, and that is correct. The hatred is only for Christians. When you read through the works of the Enlightenment philosophers who founded this new brand of atheism, who created socialism, right? When you look through the socialists, the founder of socialists, a lack of belief is belief. Yes, I'm being facetious, Erkan. It's a joke. Which just demonstrates how atheism, this atheist definition, just word games. So these philosophers are all explicitly anti-Christian. In fact, they want to co-opt Christianity and utilize it. In fact, when socialism was created as this atheistic religion, it was actually originally named Christian socialism. Christian socialism. I've gone into that in my most recent show with Thaddeus. Check online. So, what proof? So, Seb, I have asked you. Look, you know what? We're not here for you to. Hold on, let me just. I think I'll go here. So we're not here to. I'll put you in timeout. I won't hide you. I have very little patience. Okay, my job in the past was to make sure that people didn't die. Right. I did not go to seminary. I didn't come out as a dude with soft hands who, came out of as an apologist. I had a job where, if need be, I had to kill people. Okay? Do not pick a fight with me. I want to be very clear about that. And then I went on to work in national security, and my job was to make sure that crazy fanatics didn't kill people and didn't destroy things. So, yeah, I don't come at this from the perspective of some guy who has only been in seminary or in some ivory tower and has not been in the world. I am not that guy. So, atheism. Greek and Roman. Atheism is a dogmatic creed. So it's a dogmatic creed according to the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, Volume 11. That's interesting. So it's a dogmatic creed. So what is this creed? Well, we can read through the creed of these religion of these religious atheists, right? These religious humanists who created their creed around the time of the French Revolution, right? Before and after that period. So now, atheism is a dogmatic creed consisting in the denial of every kind of supernatural power. Atheism has not often been seriously maintained at any period of civilized thought. Okay, so in other words, it's uncivilized thought. All right. So now, my question to Sebas was, why do atheists constantly lie? I mean, are the atheists right? Are all the academics wrong? Is every single academic source wrong? Because Muslims will tell us every source is wrong, every single source is wrong except them. Their opinions all that count. Well, the sad thing is that according to the atheist doctrine, right, when you read through the atheist doctrine, I've covered some of this in the previous shows I've just done in the last 2 weeks. By definition, you become a god. You are a god. Many of them stated explicitly that when you become an atheist, you become your own god. And of course, a god doesn't have to explain himself. And it is assumed that atheism is true. And in fact, very little time is spent on actually providing adequate rationale for these ideas. It's just assumed. It's part of a narrative, part of a belief, right? So of course, you're a god. You are special. Now, so atheism is a creed. It has beliefs. And in fact, it is a political religion as well, like Islam. It has strong parallels with Islam. So it not only has political beliefs, it has social ambitions, right? It has protection from the courts. Most certainly, secular humanism is a religion. So yeah, guys, if you like this, I tend to be very blunt. I don't apologize for it. If you don't like it, too bad. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, okay, so we have a creed, right? Consisting in the denial of every kind of supernatural power. So that's great. I'll go on for a little bit more, of course. So atheism, commonly speaking, is the denial of God. Okay, so it's denial. Theism is belief in the conceptualization of God. Atheism is the rejection of such belief. Notice it is not just, oh, I just lack belief. Oh, I just don't have a beetle. Oh, I just don't have a pencil. It is an active rejection. Nicholas says, atheists kind of made it this signum to be dishonest, which is true. Every time you hear them start a sentence with, at the Council of Nicaea, you know you're about to hear something unbelievably stupid. And that actually, sadly, yes. There's a really good channel. Hold on, let me do this. You guys are going to find this. You would find this very helpful. Thank you to someone in my comments who provided me. Okay, yeah, of course. Here we go. Yeah, history for atheists. This is going to be very, very helpful for you. Okay. This is going to be very helpful. This is written by an atheist. This man is not an atheist. Of course, he's not a revolutionary, radical atheist. Most atheists that we see on the internet comments are radical atheists. Right? And if Seb does come back, I want to know why atheists are constantly denying these academic sources, why they simply want to claim. It's rationally incoherent to claim it's a lack of belief, because a lack of belief is not a truth position. It cannot be a truth claim. Right? It cannot be a truth claim. So it simply lacks belief. Then, as I said, my computer mouse is an atheist, right? So then atheism becomes meaningless. It's a position. Now, notice this guy speaks of a whole lot of things here. This, for instance, he talks about cosmic skeptic bungling history of Galileo. He speaks of the terrible history, the dishonest, the absolutely propagandistic rendition of history by atheists. Okay. And this is fantastic. This man's research is solid. It's detailed. He goes into great length. He has some fantastic videos. He speaks about Easter. I read that recently. That was really good. He had Tom Holland on his channel discussing history. And this guy's fantastic. So he's an atheist. Watch the videos. Have a look at the channel, at his website when you have a chance. It's really well worth it. So yeah, atheism. Okay. So atheism is the rejection of God. Okay. Rejection of this conceptualization. Current Vice, well, good to know. Thank you. I'm glad it's helpful. Zahar says, modern atheism, I would say the Western thought, is a bastard child of ancient Eastern materialism, copulated with Gnosticism. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's certainly truth to that. Gnosticism is definitely a bedfellow here. And then, of course, you've got the pagans from the 5th century BC. So you've got these sophists as well. Sophistry was, it's pejorative. It's basically a clever way of lying, clever way of telling lies. Yeah, you can nail a Muslim by their books they can't deny, but atheists are even more sloppy, like an old snake. Well, they've never been challenged. They've never been challenged. Their history has never been examined. The history of their philosophy is never. They don't even know there's a history to their philosophy. Most of them have no idea. They think it's a neutral position. That it's if you have a neutral position, if you believe nothing, you are neutral, and therefore you are pure. So therefore, it's a pure religion. No, it actually is a political religion with huge implications, right? Atheism is the critique and denial of metaphysical belief in God. Notice the critique and the denial. Critique and denial. Well, if you're critiquing, you must have an argument. You must have a basis for your critique. You must have an opposite view, right? Atheism is to be distinguished from agnosticism, which leaves open whether there's a God or not, professing to find the question unanswerable. For the atheist, the non-existence of God is a certainty, right? So it's a certainty. So on what basis are they certain? Let's go back. On what basis are they certain? Let's go ask Mr. Carl Sagan again. Someone who is certain that God does not exist. So it looks like, oh, by the way, which dictionary, which encyclopedia? Oh, the new Encyclopaedia Britannica. So we were looking at the Encyclopaedia Britannica. So Britannica obviously has no idea what they're talking about, Right, yeah. So semi-agnostics, yeah, look, religiously, as everyone knows, I'm a dyslexic, agnostic, insomniac. I lie awake whole night wondering if there really is a dog, right? Yeah, I can make that up. I mean, I'm a pansexual, demi-something, non-flagellant. Yeah, dude, I mean, please, this stuff, it's just simply a way to escape responsibility. Because if a Muslim refuses to he doesn't want to take an argument, take a position, because he knows he'll get slaughtered on the evidence. And that's exactly the same thing. It's sophistry. It is deceitful argumentation. So, okay, so Merriam-Webster again. Atheism, Greek and Roman. Atheism is a dogmatic creed consisting in the denial of every kind of supernatural power. Okay, so it's not been maintained. Okay, it looks like I may have repeated that twice, but this was repeated twice in the notes I had. So let's look at Merriam-Webster today. Definition of atheism: a lack of belief or a strong disbelief in the existence of a God. A strong disbelief, not a neutral position, not an empty position, not a pure religion of a lack of dirty Christian beliefs. Because remember, atheists do teach that it is evil. Richard Dawkins explicitly teaches that faith is evil. Of course, he has faith, right? Christianity is evil. Now, a philosophical or religious position. Hold on, Merriam-Webster just told us atheism is a philosophical or religious position. So Merriam-Webster's wrong. Every single dictionary, every single encyclopedia and scholar on the face of the planet is wrong, except for the anonymous atheist in the comments. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that fascinating? Every single academic resource on the planet is false, except for some no-name atheist in the comments. Right, so it's a philosophical or religious position characterized by disbelief in the existence of a god or any god. So a philosophical position. What is the philosophy? We must ask ourselves, what is this philosophy? Can we go look at the philosophers? And you'll find out that these people are nutcases. They are socialists, first of all. They're revolutionaries. They are, in many cases, severely genocidal and completely bat poop insane. Okay? Now, atheism. Let's go back to the Historical Dictionary of the French Revolution by Samuel Scott and Barry Rothaus. Redhouse. Atheism is a materialist philosophy. Okay, a philosophy. So if it's a philosophy, it has arguments, it has doctrine, it has reasons, it has books, it has pages, it has philosophers writing about it, right? A philosophy denying the existence of God, right? And it was held by a few philosophers during the Enlightenment. Interesting, the Enlightenment keeps coming up, and there's a reason for that. In the precise sense, atheism designates a doctrine that denies the existence of God. A doctrine, an actual doctrine. And notice, it involved in de-Christianization during the Revolution. Remember, the way that they de-Christianized France was by murdering people, hundreds of thousands of people, right? Because they were rational. Nicholas says, wouldn't it be more fair to say that an agnostic claims to not know if a God exists, not necessarily the question can't be answered? Well, it depends. Look, we've gone through various definitions for agnosticism. I mean, look, I can say, wouldn't you, blah, blah, but I mean, if I go to 50 different encyclopedias and they all tend to end up on the same spot, then fine, we have a reference point. Now, we can all have an opinion, and of course, every Abdul's going to say, well, I have an opinion that's different because those references are embarrassing to my cause, right? So, I mean, we can all have a position, but that would also be simply sophistry, right? I think 1 + 1 is equal to 5. My friend thinks it's equal to 7. I mean, maybe there's one answer. At some point, maybe there's one answer. Or maybe you get certain, but then if you have categories or degrees, you have to define them, right? But if there's an infinite number, it becomes meaningless. Then that is just, again, sophistry, meaningless waffle, right? So, yeah, okay, let's continue. So I'll go for a couple minutes, nearly done. The International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, Atheism without God. Ordinarily, this word is interpreted to mean a denial of the existence of God. Okay, denial. Classical. Christians were repeatedly charged with atheism. So back in the day, Christians were commonly told they were atheists. Why were they atheists? Because of their disbelief in the gods of heathenism. They actively denied the existence and reality of these pagan gods. It's interesting that atheists constantly try to claim that Christianity was pagan when the pagans were saying that the Christians are a problem because the Christians are, one, not pagans, and two, are taking people away from paganism to something else, right? Christianity. Now, of course, this was a crime so dangerous that it was felt to be a just cause for cruel persecutions. So, of course, Christians were persecuted for their beliefs. And in during the French Revolution, the atheists decided to slaughter them wholesale as well. And then, of course, they mentioned, besides classical atheism, right, there's ordinary, common atheism as we interpret it today. Then there's dogmatic atheism. This is fascinating. Dogmatic atheism absolutely denies the existence of God. Now, Seb Oz and other fools all the fools we've been dealing with up to now in history, it absolutely denies the existence of God. It has often been held that this is, in fact, impossible. Cousin, the scholar that's referenced here, has said it is impossible because the existence of God is implied in every assertion. Because he's saying, hey, see that guy over there? The guy in the blue jeans and the white t-shirt? No, not the one with the red jacket, the guy with the pink jacket with the yellow stripes. He doesn't exist. You're saying, you see that guy over there, the one over there, he doesn't exist. So yeah, okay, well, interesting. So that's an interesting philosophical position to examine. But I'll read that again. Dogmatic. It absolutely denies the existence of God. It has often been held that this is in fact impossible. It is impossible because the existence of God is implied in every assertion. As you know, atheists do not believe in God, and they are very, very angry at him. The dragon says, I grew up in a communist country. I saw what atheists, aka communists, do with people. That was pure evil. Exactly. Yeah. So notice Ephesians 2:12, without God, Theos. Okay? And this, of course, we can see goes back to Strong's G112, Theos, right? And denying the gods, without God, right? Denying the gods, also in the sense of denying. The Routledge Companion Encyclopedia of Theology. Let's have a look at this one. I think I'll end here now. Certain deconstructive strategies which seek to undermine, and they speak here of certain scholars who've invaded academia, right? They speak of scholars who've been developing a form of argumentation, a sophistry. They've been developing a sophist form of argument, a deceptive and destructive, deconstructive argument. This is, again, now we're back to cultural Marxism. We're back to communism here. There are certain deconstructive strategies which seek to undermine any notion of a secure foundation, whether in Christ or in culture. Now we're back to cultural Marxism. While rejecting theism, these forms of deconstruction are not simply atheistic. So they reject the idea of God. They reject the idea of Christ. Specifically, remember, these atheists are anti-Christian. They are allied. They work hand in glove, right, kissing cousins with Muslims because they both are anti-Western and anti-Christian very often because they're socialist. They dislike the Christian world order in terms of the Christian moral order, the Christian legal system, the Christian way of seeing the world is anathema to them, right? Rather, they provide an atheology of culture, both avoiding and approaching theology, specifically negative theology. So within this source, this is a negative theology. So atheism, and they hit on a very, very fine point here, is not just a lack of belief. It simply hides behind that. It's like saying atheism is a religion of peace. We know it's not a religion of peace. Historically, it has been the worst genocidal ideology in history. Atheism, the 20th century, was more dangerous than any other time in history. And those were atheist countries led by atheists, where it was compulsory to be an atheist if you were in the government. If you were in the Communist Party, you had to be an atheist. they were part of an atheist socialist philosophy, right? So let me see. A certain group claimed to be agnostic against certain gods, but explicitly denying. Semi-agnostic. So, Edgar, are you making up definitions? We've discussed that already. So, yeah. Okay, semi-agnostics. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm half agnostic, but I'm half decaf, semi full calf agnostic. I mean, like we can just make up definitions whole day. Okay, so now these deconstructive atheologies of culture disseminate radical yet almost jubilant skepticism regarding the capacity of any cultural sign, religious or secular. Right. So don't forget they've been BLM. These are secular. They're atheists. Okay. Your Antifa are secular atheists. They are fundamentalist atheists. In fact, they are violent fundamental. They are revolutionary atheists. Right. And they will tear down all of society, secular things like statues of various people and so on and so on and so on. Okay. So they're almost jubilant in their skepticism regarding the capacity of any cultural sign to produce a stable meaning and so to convey the presence of whatever it is taken to signify. Hence, their actual all-out assault on Western culture and, of course, on our religious beliefs, because the legal system obviously is based on the moral ideas perpetuated by Christianity, and so on, the family and various other things. Right? These are all ideas that are Christian. Now, for this scholar here, for Rorty, the self has to be de-divinized. We are made in the image of God. In atheism, you are made in the image of man. Man in the image of man. Man worshipping himself. That's exactly what that is. Nicholas says, how should someone be classified that say that they don't know if God exists and don't know if that question can ultimately... That's an agnostic. That's an agnostic. But notice what we have here is this is not just atheists. Right? These are people that are anti-theistic. They have an atheology. The whole enterprise of the French Revolution of those philosophers with their doctrine of atheism, right, was atheology, was antagonistic to Christian theology. Right? It was specifically an anti-Christian theology, an anti-Christian doctrine, an anti-Christian effort. So look, I'll leave it at that. I'll stop here. So this was an introduction to this material, and I'll be doing this probably in 2 weeks with Thaddeus. I'll cover this, and we'll have a discussion with this. So guys, if you do like this, please do like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. And again, thank you to Nicholas Paulson, who's a subscriber, who's joined the channel. I need to actually do more on that, but I'd like to grow my memberships. You may not realize, but this takes hours and weeks and months of work. It's an incredible amount of work that goes into this. So I do appreciate all the donations I've been given. I do appreciate all the assistance, and thank you, because it helps me to buy books. Sometimes I actually have to buy books for this stuff. Yeah, you'd be amazed that not all books are free. So I actually have to go and buy materials for this, and I've got to pay for equipment, and I've managed to, thanks to the donations from my audience, buy equipment that I needed. Cameras, new camera. I just paid $300 for a brand new camera. New microphone a few months ago. So thank you all very much, and thank you all for the support. I hope this has been helpful. Please use this when in your discussions with atheists. Remember, they are anti-theists. They are, in fact, anti-Christian theists. And don't forget that if you look at the tenets of the Satanic Temple, you'll find that the Enlightenment values that they espouse as the secular humanists and those of the Satanic Temple are identical. It is, according to Christian doctrine, it is entirely satanic. Nicholas, thank you very much. No, I appreciate it. It really does help. Believe me, this takes more time than people would believe. Sometimes, Malcolm Layton says, sometimes people are agnostic to avoid the question, and that's 100% true. That's why Muslims suddenly become, Quran-only Christians like that. Question them, and it's like, only do the Quran. Because, it's a cop-out. It's a way of escaping having to provide evidence. You and Thaddeus need to come up with an alternative. Gab Pay is apparently one. I would go on to that. However, Super Chats, please, if you'd like to. I mean, look, I'm not going to say no. I'm really not going to say no. I put a lot of time into this, and I do appreciate that. GabPay is not available. I'm in Poland. I live in Europe, and it's not available to me. And for those who have donated recently, I have had a few. Thank you very, very much. It's really appreciated, and I hope that I went silent for a while. I was working on a lot of this material, doing a lot of research, and there's a lot more to come on this topic. So yeah, guys, thank you. And with my home educated students' current advice, great. I'm glad that was helpful to you. Please share it, tell your people, and as Revolut, yes, if that works, thanks. So please use these ideas, see if you can think of ways to utilize these ideas, approach atheists, speak to them, and you'll find that they're Abduls. They don't want evidence. They've made up their minds. Their minds are closed. Right? Their minds are incredibly closed. So Nicholas Paulson, thank you very much. He joined, and yeah, I need to work on that as well. So yeah, look, you know what? True, I know you cringe, but I mean, there's that. I get nothing otherwise, right? Um, yeah, but look, that's entirely up to you. If I can't do Gab because it's not available in Europe. Wow. um, no, I save a lot of the money. I buy equipment. I've got to pay for subscriptions. I have to do things. I've got subscriptions to various resource sites and so on. I have to buy books. So this stuff is not free. But thank you. Yeah, I try and keep this towards activities that I'm doing. Thank you again, Nicholas Paulson. You're very generous, and thank you, guys. So look, yeah, I hope this has been helpful and interesting, and I will be back online probably tomorrow with Thunderous. Otherwise, if not, then on Thursday, I believe, with Thaddeus, Thursday evening at about the same time my time. I'll be on with yeah, 7:30 my time. I'll be on with Thaddeus, I believe. So yeah. So yeah, agnosticism is not hostile, whereas atheism, if you look at the philosophies that came from that period, they are actively hostile, inherently hostile. They're socialist, and socialism is inherently hostile to Christian beliefs, Christian doctrine, to Western doctrine. So guys, thank you. I should end off here, otherwise I'll be a whole night. Thank you very much, and I hope this was interesting. Please share it. Please use this information. Drop a line in the comments, and yeah, and if someone's going to troll, look, I have little patience. Okay, I have very little patience, so go and troll someone else.